Hey there guys, this is Richard, your host, with another marvelous video. Conan the Barbarian was the brainchild of Robert E. Howard, a writer from Texas. Howard was inspired by a bunch of other authors like Rudyard Kipling and H.P. Lovecraft. Conan first appeared in 1932 in Weird Tales magazine in a story called The Phoenix on the Sword, which was actually a reworked tale originally meant for another character, King Kull. Howard, while a jack of all trades in writing genres, is best known for kickstarting the whole sword and sorcery genre. He once said that Conan felt real to him because he was a mix of tough guys he'd met, from prize fighters to oil field workers. Conan made his comic debut in Mexico during the 50s and 60s, in La Reina de la Costa Negra, but his official comic entrance was in Marvel's Conan the Barbarian #1 in 1970. There are two major Conan comic timelines, the Marvel one, which wrapped up in 95, and the Dark Horse one, which started in 2004 and is still going. So, in this video, we'll explore the entire life of Conan the Barbarian, who went on to become King Conan. We'll start with his Dark Horse origin story and then explore his Marvel version before wrapping up with his live action and animated appearances. So, sit tight because this is gonna be a super wild one.
Let's invoke Crom and begin, shall we?
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origin. Before I dive into the story of Conan the Barbarian, let me introduce you to Conan's long-forgotten and supposed Atlantean ancestor, King Kull. Kull's story starts in Atlantis, where he's sent into exile for sticking up for a woman on death row. He wanders around, sword in hand, gathering a crew until he ends up as the ruler of Valusia. As king, Kull accidentally lets loose this mega supernatural entity called the Skull of Silence. He manages to shove it back where it came from and heads home. Back in Valusia, a Pictish guy named Kanu informs Kull that his court is crawling with serpent men. Together, they boot out the serpent men and lead a raid to trash their temple. During the raid, they bump into Thulsa-Doom, another enemy of the serpent men. They bring him back to Valusia, but unbeknownst to them, Thulsa-Doom had his eyes on the serpent's eye gem that Kull took from the temple. Doom plays Kull and steals the gem, but Kull comes out on top when Doom can't handle the gem's power. Next, Kull sails south with his fleet to help Damaskar in a trip with Rykos, but Kull's own men, Canub, stabs him in the back to help Damaskar use Kull's ships for some demon summoning ritual. Kull wins in the end when his buddy Brul takes down the sorcerer who was performing the ritual. Back in Valusia, there's trouble with the water supply in 7 districts. Kull leads a couple of soldier squads into Kjar, an ancient city under Valusia, where they run into a giant monster. They take it down along with the Valusian, who causes the monster to wake up. Now, it's been heavily suggested that King Kull was actually an ancestor of Conan, and it's from Kull that Conan gets his personality. If you want to know more about this legendary man, you should check out our origin video on Kull. I'll leave a link in the description. And now, let's dive deep into the mythos of Conan. Origin, Dark Horse version. Conan's life in the beginning was anything but smooth, and it's safe to say that he didn't really have a childhood. He came into the world right in the middle of a battlefield, which surely makes him a born warrior of sorts, but it also means that his life was gonna be hard. His mum, Fiala, actively fought along with members of his tribe of the Cimmerians against their rivals, the Vanir. Being born in a battle zone was a big deal for the Cimmerians. They took it as a sign that Conan was destined to be an ace warrior. From the get-go, Conan spent a lot of time in the company of his dad Conaldar's smithy, and got buff by working the bellows and learning all sorts of know-how about weapons. So you could say that Conan was practically born with a hammer in his hand. Before he even turned 7, Conan showed he wasn't someone to mess with. He took down Donal, a local bully way older and bigger than him. By 8, he'd gained so much strength that he was chopping wood like a pro and got the hang of the longsword, spear, and dagger. That same year, he really proved his mettle. Conan saved the tribe's war chief from wolves by going full beast mode and taking out one of the wolves with nothing but his bare hands and teeth. As a teenager, Conan really went through the ringer. First off, he got mauled by a massive cat, which left him not just physically wrecked, but also kind of in a funk as he started doubting himself big time. While he was still healing and feverish, he decided to trek to Brita's Vale, which was an off-limits battlefield. There, first, he thought he was seeing ghostly warriors, although it could have been the fever messing with his head, and the former seems more likely. Then he has to fight a demented man, who becomes the first man that Conan killed. We all know that he was a bit of a womanizer, and from a young age, he started getting a bit of a rep with the ladies. He'd had a thing with Cowlan from his tribe, and then there was Ariane, this chestnut-haired girl, daughter of a wizard named Alcibiades, who lived nearby. She might have been his first real crush. However, Conan was also the village hero. Like this one time, he saved everyone by snapping a rampaging bull's neck. But like many sword and sorcery warriors from the age, he was kind of a lone wolf, and sometimes he stirred up trouble, especially with Alcibiades. Things got pretty complicated in Conan's tribe when they mistook Ariane for a spy from Aquilonia. Her dad, Alcibiades, got so ticked off that he threatened to tell tell everything about Cimmeria's resources to Aquilonia, which could have spelled doom within no time. However, this later became the spark that would later ignite the Battle of Venarium. The tribe wasn't too happy with Conan over all this drama, and in the heat of the moment, Conan ended up killing Gialchad. These rough patches, plus the hours spent listening to his grandfather Connacht's tales about his journeys to places like Aquilonia and Hyperborea, really lit a fire under Conan's sense of adventure. Since his teenage years, Conan was never big on religion, but he did believe in Crom, a deity who was more the type to give you the will to survive tough times. Battle of Venarium. Aquilonia was the most powerful kingdom in all of Hyboria, and it had its eyes on expanding its turf. They set their sights northward and planned to capture Gondolin before going to the Bessonian marshlands. They got a foothold there and built Venarium, and it was from Venarium that they tried to reach their boundaries right into southern Cimmeria. Conan, still a young buck, would tag along with the older warriors to Venarium. They acted like hunters and traders, but were actually sizing up the place for a raid. Before Conan had even seen 15 winters, the Cimmerians launched an all-out attack on Venarium. This was Conan's first real taste of war, and he didn't just participate, he came out on top as one of the fiercest warriors of the tribe. The battle was brutal. The Cimmerians went to town on the Aquilonians and turned the White Hills red. Aquilonia got so scared and scarred, they never even thought about coming back. At that time, Conan wasn't even fully grown yet, but he was already a towering 6 feet and a solid 180 pounds. He had the sharp senses of a woodsman, the toughness of a mountain man, the strength of his blacksmith dad, and as I've already mentioned, he knew his way around a knife, axe, and sword. After Venarium, things turned sour for Conan. Ariane died in the chaos, and soon after, his grandfather Connacht passed away. That's when Conan decided to leave his village behind and set off on his own path, becoming an Aesir warrior. After Venarium got wrecked, the Cimmerian tribes kinda just did their own thing, and Conan, ever the restless spirit, got bored of the same old hunting routine. So he headed north, aiming for Asgard. On his way, he stumbled upon a village in Asgard getting roughed up by Vanir raiders. Conan jumped in and saved Henga and her kid from one of the attackers. This heroic move caught the eye of Njord, the leader of the Aesir, who was pretty impressed and invited Conan to join their ranks. Conan and the Aesir start chasing down the Vanir raiders and head east to do so, but not everyone was thrilled about Conan's rise in the ranks and his increasing popularity. Two of the Aesir, Einar and Skjarl, weren't too keen on how much Njord was leaning on Conan. Plus, Skjarl had a personal beef with Conan. Why? Well, he got beaten by him in a fight and isn't too happy about Henga, his partner, sneaking off with Conan. These two, as in Einar and Skjarl, start cooking up a plan to sort out Conan once they're done with the Vanir. During this time, Conan picked up some great tracking skills, thanks to an Aesir named Gorm. So you could say that this was a period of growth and learning for him, even amidst the tensions and rivalries. Meeting Atali and family. The Aesir, led by Conan, followed the Vanir into the icy lands of Nordheim, which could mean only one thing. A brutal fight was on the cards. It was gonna be Wulfhere's Aesir versus Bragi's Vanir, and things got pretty intense. When the dust settles, it's just Conan and one Vanir warrior, Heimdall, left standing. They go at it, and Conan comes out on top, but he takes a serious hit to the head. His helmet gets dented, and he's left staggering around the battlefield all dazed and confused. As he was about to black out, with the northern lights doing their thing in the sky, this stunning woman appeared out of nowhere. She had golden hair that was a mix of beautiful red and yellow and was barely wearing anything. She introduced herself as Atali and started playing a game of teasing with Conan. Conan, half out of it and all riled up, starts chasing her across the icy plains. After a long chase, Conan kinda regrets going after the woman as he meets two massive frost giants. These were Atali's brothers and were armed with axes. Even with his injuries, Conan's a force to be reckoned with, and he takes them down. But when he goes to grab Atali, he ends up with just her gossamer veil. She cries out to her dad, Ymir, and just like that, a bolt of lightning splits the sky, Atali vanishes, and Conan gets knocked out cold. When Njord's men find Conan in the snow, they think his tale is just him talking crazy, what with the big dent in his helmet and all. But Gorm backs him up, saying he's seen Atali, Ymir's daughter, before. The others were still unwilling to believe it because they thought Gorm also had a few screws loose since a childhood head injury. Even Conan starts to doubt himself, thinking maybe it was all a dream. You see, that's what happens. When too many people start saying the same thing, lies become the truth and you start doubting yourself. But then he pulls out this piece of gossamer cloth, something no human in that time and place would possess. Naturally, it left everyone speechless. Later on, Conan fixes up his horned helmet, which his dad, Conaldar, made for him back when he was coming of age. The helmet serves as a reminder of where he's come from and the wild journey he's been on. pushed to slavery. But hey, the fight wasn't over. In fact, it had barely begun. Njord's Aesir people catch up with Tyr's Vanir people just after sunrise, and the hosts quickly overpower them. But their victory is short-lived. Out of nowhere, these tall, ghostly Hyborians show up and turn the tide. Conan knew that he had to do something, so he set Tyr's men free, and for a moment, Aesir and Vanir fought side by side against their common enemy. But they were all worn out from the earlier scrap, and it wasn't looking good. Tyr spots Skjarl and Einar on a hill away from the fight, and suggests Conan join them to attack the Hyborians from behind. Turns out, though, Skjarl and Einar are the ones who set this whole trap up, and of course, they're not going to help Conan out. Instead, they toss him right into the hands of the Hyborians. Everyone except those two traitors ends up captured. Conan, who always wanted to see Hyperborea, ends up there in the worst possible way, as a gladiator in chains. Okay, maybe not the worst, but you know what I mean. The Hyperboreans keep him drugged, so he's got no clue if he's been there for days, weeks, or even longer. All he knows is his dream of visiting Hyperborea has turned into a nightmare. So yeah, Conan has found himself in Hyperborean gladiator pits. However, hope returned when the slave girl named Easmini showed up. All she ever wanted was freedom, and tells Conan about how they're all being kept under with this yellow lotus stuff. Luckily enough, she had some antidote and struck a deal with Conan. Help her escape and she'll help him and his buddies. Conan starts sneaking the antidote to his men. By day, he keeps up his act as the dazed fighter, but at night, all he worries about is finding a way out of the city. On these night missions, Conan also learns many things about Hyperborea. They used to say it was like this affluent and rich place, full of awesome cities, wealth, and people living the dream, with all kinds of creatures from lambs to griffins. For people from the era, it was the life of your dreams. Except, it's all a facade. In reality, the whole place is juiced up by the life force of a massive slave population, and as you may have already guessed, Conan and his Aesir friends are a part of it now. Avenging the Fallen. When Hyperborea's Lord Aishtiana gets wind of an intruder lurking in the palace, he decides to unleash some lions to deal with it. Conan gets roughed up by one of the lions and loses his sword, but he manages a narrow escape through a window. A few days later, Conan leads a full-on slave uprising, but Hyperborea's wizards were way too powerful. Despite Conan breaking free, he couldn't save Njord, Easmini, or any of his fellow Aesir warriors. They all end up dead, and that's something that was gonna stick with Conan for a long time. From then on, Conan developed this deep-seated grudge against sorcerers and swore to someday see Hyperborea turn to rubble. But first things first, he's got a score to settle with Skjarl and Einar, the backstabbers. Equipped with a scavenged sword, armor, and some gold from the Fallen, Conan trudges south through the snow. He tracks down Skjarl and Einar in a small Brethunian town, and let's just say they don't get a chance to apologize. With his revenge complete and running low on gold, Conan gears up with some food and other essentials. His next stop was Nemedia. Rise and fall as a thief. In the south, currency and cash had become common, but it was a concept Conan wasn't exactly familiar with. In his world, you didn't need a job or cash to get respect. But here, without a steady job or some coins in your pocket, you were basically invisible. Welcome to the real world, Conan. So, with an empty stomach and a dry throat, Conan turned to thievery to get by. You might wonder, with his mad skills in combat, why didn't he just become a mercenary? The simple answer was that there wasn't much demand for his sword without the reputation he had up in Cimmeria, and joining the army was also out of the way because Conan came from a place where you fought your own battles, not in some organized group, and that too for someone else. To him, there was no glory in hiding behind others in battle. So, slipping into the role of a thief just made sense to him, which is kinda twisted. I mean, he was choosing thievery over salary and was calling it honorable. But then again, not all of us have to agree on matters of code and honor. In the Hyborian Age, thieves were everywhere. No matter the size of the city, you had all types: the sneaky pickpocket, the clever lockpick, and the tough muggers. Conan was just another face in the crowd, but with a bit more muscle and a lot more cunning. Naturally, he was going to make a better thief than most. In fact, word around the campfire was he could give even the legendary thief Adroit a run for his money. Conan built this rep for himself in Zamora, the city of thieves. This place was swarming with crafty pickpockets and sneaky burglars, but Conan was a cut above. He could swipe valuables from even the sharpest locals. And of course, snatching loot from other thieves wasn't a big deal for Conan because he could mostly fight his way through them, and that, my friend, was just another day at the office. In Zamora, Conan became something of a shadowy legend. There's this one story about him promising a village to get back a big chunk of cash a wizard named Zukala had taken from them. Conan not only sneaks into the wizard's tower and grabs the dough from the vault, but he also slits Zukala's throat in the dead of night without waking a soul. Well, I guess an extra bit of service never hurt anyone. Barbarian to the core, he decides to keep the loot for himself. Turns out, the villagers were planning to kill him once he returned with the cash. cash. Not that they'd likely have succeeded, but hey, Conan's choice sure made things simpler for him. So basically, no one was nice to anyone. In Corinthia, Conan also bumps into some gundermen he'd fought with back at the Battle of Venarium. Together, they start up a small-time thieves guild with Conan as the boss. They were raking in the cash for a while and started to feel pretty untouchable, but things go south when they rob this chubby priest who was serving the god Anu. What they didn't know was that this guy was also a fence and a snitch for the authorities. Thanks to the priest, Conan's crew of thieves gets busted. Everyone but Conan ends up getting hanged in the town square. Naturally, Conan was super ticked off and started looking for payback. In his attempts to do so, he snuck into the temple of Anu that night. He goes full-on Avengers mode and took out every priest there before sticking their heads on pikes. And if you're wondering about our fat priest, Conan makes sure he gets special treatment. This guy was gutted and hung right from Anu's altar. By this time, Conan started to understand what friendship really meant and its importance in life. He feels like he owes it to his fallen buddies to make things right. At 19, this string of cold-blooded murders became one of his few acts of brute savagery, and he decided that it was time to leave the thieving life behind. Adventure with Yag Kosha, a super powerful alien. Many years ago, an alien entity named Yag Kosha built the Elephant Tower in just one night. The Elephant Tower was something truly otherworldly and continued to become weirder the closer you got to it. However, Yag Kosha was trapped there by a priest named Yara. Conan and another thief, Taurus, decide to sneak into the tower. Right at the base, they find a couple of lions on patrol in the gardens. However, something was off about these lions. They were silent, like ninja lions, if you will. But Conan and Taurus knew how to get around tricky situations like this one. They used this black lotus flower powder to create a mist that knocks out the lions. Inside the tower, though, things became way more difficult for Conan and Taurus. A massive spider, as big as a hog, manages to attack Taurus, and that's the end of him. The spider turns on Conan and shoots its web, but misses. However, some of its venom splashes on Conan, which leaves a mark. Conan doesn't waste time, though. He grabbed this huge chest full of jewels that weighed some 400 pounds and smashed the spider with it. With jewels and spider guts everywhere, it looked far from a treasure heist. Conan then makes it to the main room of the tower, and there he spots this thing called the Heart of the Elephant. He also finds Yara and Yag Kosha, the alien prisoner we spoke about earlier. Suddenly, the heart starts spinning and fills the entirety of the room with bright light. When the light show stops, Conan discovers that Yara and Yag Kosha have simply disappeared into nothingness, just vanished. Following that, the whole place starts shaking apart, and Conan figures out that Yara and Yag Kosha's magic is the only thing keeping the tower together. He bolts out to the gardens just in time as the tower explodes and turns into a shower of crystal pieces. Later on, Conan mulls over why the tower and the gem were both named after an elephant. It's not long before Conan gets to meet Yag Kosha, who is a blend of a human and an elephant with a pale green skin. So, the mystery behind the tower's name gets resolved. Turns out, Yag Kosha and his friends came to Earth from their jungle planet Yag, which was actually beyond the Milky Way. Yag Kosha's stories got Conan thinking about dinosaurs and the ancient past. The way Yag Kosha talked about his homeworld, Conan felt that the events took place thousands of years ago, not hundreds. Maybe time's just different for aliens like Yag Kosha. Yag Kosha told Conan some stories about watching humans evolve from apes to the sword-slinging, city-making people they were now. He mentioned that all his alien friends who came to Earth had died, and he was the last one of his kind left on Earth. He'd been living in some ancient forgotten temples in the wilds of Kitai. Some even thought Yag Kosha was the Hindu god Ganesha, and you can't blame them because the resemblance is uncanny. Ganesha is a deity with a human body but an elephant's head. But when Conan found him, Yag Kosha was in good shape. In fact, he was all wrapped up in magical chains. Turned out, this wizard Yara had tricked and enslaved him, forcing him to build the Tower of the Elephant. Yara had tortured him so bad the poor guy was crippled, blind, and stuck doing whatever Yara wanted. Conan, who wasn't really known for his soft side, actually felt sorry for Yag Kosha. The alien just wanted to end his suffering, so Conan did what Yag Kosha asked. He ended his life and used his heart's blood on the Heart of the Elephant gem. The blood vanished into the gem, leaving no trace. There, Conan went to where Yara was passed out, drunk, and left the heart by his feet. As Yara woke up, Conan said the magic words Yag Kosha had told him.
Yag Kosha gives you your last gift and your last enchantment.
Yara gets sucked into the gem, which then explodes into a burst of light. And that was the end of Yara, the not-so-great mystic. A short stint with Janissa. Janissa hailed from a rich and affluent Zingaran family and was set up to marry a rich nobleman. All her family wanted was to climb the social ladder and didn't really care one bit about what Janissa wanted or even thought. She was just a tool for their ambitions, which really got under her skin, as it would anyone's. Fed up with being treated like property, Janissa pulled a Rachel Geller before her wedding day and escaped. She wasn't about to let herself be traded off like cattle. In her escape, she ends up in the wild and crosses paths with this witch known as the Bone Woman. Janissa tells her story to the Bone Woman, who offers her a deal. So, the Bone Woman offered Janissa power to stand toe-to-toe with any guy, but in exchange for such power, she'd have to perform a stint of service to the witch. Janissa was craving the strength and independence she'd just been offered and jumped straight at the offer, without thinking about the consequences of her decision. She was ready to do whatever it took to make sure she's never under anyone's thumb again. Janissa's training started off rougher and tougher than she ever expected. The Bone Woman drugged her with yellow lotus. Yeah, the same drug that was used on Conan in the fighting pits of Hyperborea. Anyway, after drugging Janissa, the Bone Woman tossed her a sword and chucked her into a pit full of demons. What happened next was further twisted and messed up for Janissa, as she was forced to defend herself night after night. It took her weeks, but she finally managed to take out one of the demons with a sword. Despite this small victory, the others were relentless and continued their assaults on Janissa. But she wasn't going to give up. She got tougher and fiercer every day and fought back against those demons with everything she had, as if her life depended on it, which it quite rightly did. After a grueling decade in that pit, yep, a decade, she defeated over 10,000 of them and clawed her way out, right up to the Bone Woman's feet. Janissa had become incredibly tough, the kind that could handle any pain and come out on top. She had that in common with Conan, whom she eventually met, but hanging out with Conan made her see the difference between them. He'd built his own strength, while she'd sought it from a witch. Realizing this, Janissa felt shame and decided to split ways with Conan, feeling that their paths as companions had come to an end. However, I still believe that she did do a lot of hard labor to become who she was. Maybe, just maybe, she was being too hard on herself. Thoth-Amon, an enemy he never met. For the most part of Conan's life, he and Thoth-Amon were arch-enemies who never actually bumped into each other. Yeah, he fought Thoth-Amon's minions and followers, and the two were always on opposing sides but never met face-to-face. Thoth-Amon was essentially the leader of a Black Ring sorcerers group in Stygia, and he almost got Conan killed, not just once, but twice. And the worst part was that he did so without even knowing who Conan was. The first time Conan gets a whiff of Thoth-Amon is when he sees the wizard symbol on a serpent man sarcophagus. That night, he was helping a priest named Calanthes, who also had a beef with Thoth-Amon. The second close call happens years later. By now, Conan had become the king of Aquilonia. Thoth-Amon sneaks into Aquilonia, disguised as a slave to this rebel leader named Ascalante. Thoth-Amon was playing the long game, waiting for his serpent ring to show up in the city. When he finally gets it back and powers up, he sends a dog demon to take out Ascalante. But Ascalante and his men were plotting to assassinate King Conan that very night. Conan ends up in a nasty fight with the demon in his own castle and kills it. But even then, Conan and Thoth-Amon never actually cross paths. A woman named Jenna. After Conan took out the priests of Anu, he was living at a local tavern. Even the authorities are clueless about who did the deed at the temple. There, he spots this stunning blonde, Jenna. One thing leads to another, and they end up at her place. In a drunken blur, Conan tells her all about the temple job. Next thing Conan knows, he's waking up in a dungeon, thanks to Jenna ratting him out. But a cell can't hold Conan for long. He busts out and stumbles upon Jenna in the castle. She freaks out, but Conan doesn't say a word, just picks her up and chucks her out the window into the castle cesspit. She's left screaming and cursing, trying to stay afloat in the nasty mess. Years later, Conan crosses paths with Jenna again. This time, she was about to be sacrificed by some loony cult worshipping a giant bat. Conan, doing his hero thing, fights off the cult and the bat and saves Jenna. She offers a thank you with the physical sword, but Conan just sends her on her way. A man of strong will, I see. This was pretty different to what Conan usually does. I mean, we know him as someone who doesn't say no to women, right? But maybe it was Jenna's backstabbing that made him resent her. Conan was not the most righteous one. Prince Murillo, despite his fancy exterior and lavish lifestyle, was smooth and skilled with a sword, and he had this certain charm to match his abilities. But wait, he wasn't all good. He had a knack for bribing officials to reveal state secrets, and then he'd sell those secrets for a profit to rival nations. Words like regret and remorse were not really present in Murillo's dictionary, and nothing could really quench his thirst for wealth. But then comes Nabonidus, the Red Priest, who gets wise to Murillo's backstabbing ways. Nabonidus figures he'll set things right by telling the king, which for Murillo means a one-way ticket to Execution City. Desperate, Murillo scouts for an assassin to take out the Red Priest and stumbles upon Conan, who, by now, was cooling his heels in jail. Murillo offers Conan his freedom in exchange for the hit. Conan, seeing a way out, takes the deal. The Red Priest, meanwhile, doesn't go straight to the king with the dirt on Murillo. Instead, sends a bloody message by lopping off the ear of Murillo's buddy, which was supposed to serve as a clear get-out-of-dodge warning to the corrupt prince. Nabonidus got wind that both a bunch of nationalists and Conan were after him, so he set up his place with some traps. But before he could make a move, his own servant cum pet, Thak, turned on him. Thak was a hulking brute from a long-gone primitive tribe, and he snatched Nabonidus' red robe and himself pretended to be the Red Priest. Conan and Murillo arrive at Nabonidus' residence. Conan had to take care of this monstrous creature, and the real Nabonidus fills Conan and Murillo in. Turns out, he'd taken Thak in as a baby after his tribe was wiped out. Thak, half man, half something else, got stronger and smarter as he grew, but in a way that made him super dangerous. While they were talking, Thak was busy wiping out the nationalists with traps all over the mansion. Conan steps up to take Thak down. He hides until Thak barrels down the hallway. Conan leaps out, tackling Thak. It was quite a fierce fight, with Thak almost getting the upper hand, but Conan was just too much for him. He sees Thak as more than a beast, a real opponent. The heat had started to cool down, but Nabonidus tried to act smart with Conan and Murillo. He chucks a chair at Nabonidus, nailing him in the head. Murillo, true to his word, gives Conan some gold and a horse. Conan, ever the wanderer, rides off to whatever's next on his exciting path. Meeting Prince Murillo again. After his stint as a thief from ages 16 to 21, Conan figured it was time for a change. He packed up his skills and street smarts and headed east to Turan, where he wanted to serve as a mercenary. In Turan, Conan developed the dream of building an army that could go toe-to-toe with Aquilonia. He quickly became the go-to guy for any mercenary who was looking for glory and adventure. This was a shift for Conan, at least as far as his character and working style were concerned. You see, he was used to doing things alone, but now he had a crew to lead. They swapped skills and tricks, beefing up their already tough game. Conan even picked up bow skills from the Turanian archers, something he'd never bothered with before. Turns out he was a natural, but we also know that Conan was the restless type. After a while, he got bored with the Turan scene and started itching for new action. Hearing rumors of war back west, he hit the road, taking odd mercenary jobs and dipping back into his thieving waves along the Road of Kings. Things had changed back home. It wasn't Aquilonia calling the shots anymore, but Prince Murillo. And with Murillo around, Conan knew he'd be welcomed back with open arms. Demon of Darkness versus God of Light. Conan found himself in the middle of an age-old clash between Nergal, the Demon of Darkness, and Tammuz, the God of Light. Their eternal war was about to reach its climax in Yaralet, a city up north in Turan. The big player in Yaralet was Munthassam Khan. This guy used to be alright, but then he stumbled upon the hand of Nergal in some wrecked caravan. That talisman messed him up, filled him with a burning rage and an insatiable thirst for power, not to mention some freaky mystical abilities. The only thing that could stand up to the hand of Nergal was the heart of Tammuz. And wouldn't you know it, Conan ends up with it. Conan was marching with the Turanian army to take down Khan's forces where he got the heart. This thing saved his skin when a swarm of phantom bats wipes out his army, leaving him the sole survivor amid total devastation. Later, Conan makes his way to Khan's palace for the fight. When Conan and Khan finally come face to face, the two talismans unleash Nergal and Tammuz themselves. They duke it out, gods and demons, until they're both done for, taking Khan's palace down with them. Conan, ever the survivor, manages to get out just in time. Ages 28 to 30, Marvel Comics. Around 28, Conan took charge of the Cossacks. Under his lead, they stirred up trouble on Turan's frontier, teaming up with the Vilayet pirates. They became a real pain for Turan and Hyrcania, hitting their merchant ships hard. At one point, Conan and his Cossacks got tangled in a hostage situation with Jehungir Agar and his counselor, Ghaznavi. They brought along an Amedian captive, Octavia. There were some glances between her and Conan, but she claimed it was all part of Jehungir and Ghaznavi's scheme. King Yezdegerd of Turan was getting fed up with Conan and the Cossacks. Jehungir Agar set a trap, planning to lure Conan to the island of Xapur by spreading a rumor about Octavia escaping there. Sure enough, Conan took the bait. Weeks later, Octavia actually did escape Jehungir Agar's dungeon and ended up on Xapur by accident. Conan showed up soon after. He scouted the island and stumbled upon the ruins of Dagonia. After dealing with Khosatral Kel and seeing Dagonia fall back into ruins, Conan finally won Octavia over with a kiss. But their victory was short-lived. Yezdegerd gathered a massive army and crushed the Cossacks in a day-long battle. Conan and about 300 of his men, including Tubal and Hattusis, escaped to Iranistan. They got lost in the Ilbars during winter, but were rescued by Balash and his Kushafi tribe. Balash stopped his tribe from wiping out the Kozaki and let them stay for the winter. Conan and Balash hit it off and became tight. They eventually made it to Anshan, looking rough and half-starved. They joined forces with Kobad Shah, the king of Iranistan, who was an enemy of Balash. When Kobad ordered Conan to capture Balash, Conan said no way. Naturally, Kobad wasn't happy and tried to have Conan killed. Things got even crazier, with ghouls attacking, and a royal mess of alliances. Gotarza offered Conan a chance to clear his name with a duel, but then news came that Kobad Shah had been killed. His son, King Arshak, cleared Conan of all charges and invited him back to Anshan. Conan was done with all the court drama. He gave his Kozaki the choice to stick with him or go back to Anshan. The leaderless Hyrcanians could either join Conan or stay with Balash. Nanaya, who'd been disguised as a Zwagir, decided to go with Conan. So Conan rounded up his crew to head back to Kushaf, ready for whatever came next. Ages 30 to 38. Aged 30, Conan joined up with the Zwagirs, a rough and rowdy bunch. He was with them for a year or two and led them into some risky raids. Things got out of hand when they looted the idol of the cat goddess, and Conan, under the idol's influence, pushed the Zwagirs into more brutal raids. Eventually, a guy named Fazal took over and swiped the idol, but his attack on a city went sideways. Conan ended up taking Fazal out and ditching the idol in the desert. By 32, Conan was in Aquilonia, making a living as a gladiator. He and his fighter girlfriend Jalla put on a show for the crowds. But things got real when Lady Antiva Brosus took a liking to Conan. After he turned her down, she rigged his next fight to be his death. Conan and Jalla fought for real, but Jalla didn't make it. Conan took his revenge on Antiva and then gave Jalla a proper send-off with a funeral pyre. Next, Conan led a gang of outlaws in the Turanian desert, but soon left them to head southeast into Vendia. There, he ended up fighting illusions of his past enemies inside a beast called the Leviah god. His final illusion was of some god named Razazel, who was apparently destined to kill him someday. Aged 34, Conan became the chief of the Afghuli tribesmen in the Himalayas, giving both the Vendians and Yetzigerd's Turanians a tough time. As a buccaneer, Conan first joined a Mesantian collector to grab a Yimshan idol, then ended up captaining a pirate crew. He spent a few years as a Barakan pirate before switching to the Zingaran buccaneers at about 37. After losing Valeria, Conan, now possibly over 38, heard about the Teeth of Gwalior jewels in Kashan and signed up to train their armies. Post-adventure, he wandered through Punt, Zimbabwe, Turan and various Hyborian realms before heading back to Cimmeria. King Conan. After his time back in Cimmeria, Conan, pushing 40, decided to join the Aquilonian army as a scout. He found himself in Conajahara, right on the Aquilonian border during the Pictish Wars. As a scout, Conan was taking out Picts in response to an attack on Fort Tusculum. But then he ran into ghost snakes and got pretty banged up. A local Pictish shaman patched him up, and Conan ended up fighting alongside the Picts, even taking down their king snake. After that, he headed back to Venarium, having killed his first king. Conan's feats made him a bit of a legend, and he climbed the ranks to general. As a top dog, he led a victorious battle against the Picts at Venarium in the Pictish Wars. When Conan became king of Aquilonia, he struggled with the peace he'd created. He got sick, only recovering after moonlighting as a masked vigilante in Tarantia with a Kushite lion. Remembering his thieving days, Conan let his old pal Scorn off the hook for stealing jewels from the treasury. It was a brief escape from the weight of the crown. Later, while rescuing Zenobia, he met Kang Gludze, a Khitan slave girl, with whom he had a son, Kang Sho. 10 years into his reign, Conan led a charge against Menace, Hurath, and the Brotherhood of the Spider, who were plotting against him and summoning their god, Beithra. After Zenobia got sick and recovered, Conan reconnected with his son, Con, during a hunting trip. He then dealt with Pantho, Duke of Guaralid, who was causing trouble in Zingara. Conan squashed Pantho's plans and set up a puppet ruler in Zingara. Zenobia later died, giving birth to their fourth child, a daughter. By this time, Conan was nearing 70, still a force to be reckoned with, and still had enough juice to make babies. Death of Conan, original Marvel timeline. After a rough war on the eastern border with Turan, King Conan stumbled upon 2 kids gathering dead bodies. Turns out they were the children of the Crimson Witch, a nemesis Conan thought he'd taken care of years ago. Surprise, surprise, she was still kicking. The witch and her kids dragged Conan to the Tower of Razazel and started draining his blood, trying to bring back Razazel. Conan, weak and fading, called out for Zenobia as the tower crumbled with Razazel's grand entrance. Seeing his chance amidst the chaos, Conan took down the Crimson Witch one last time before the falling rubble of Razazel's tower crushed him. Then things got really trippy. Conan woke back up in Cimmeria, young again, but with all his memories intact. He felt this weird pull to climb Mount Crom and kept dying and coming back to life, aging each time, until he was his old self again. Frustrated and looking for answers, he ended up facing Crom himself. Conan wasn't happy with Crom's hands-off approach to Razazel's havoc, so he picked a fight with his god. Crom hit back with a curse that Conan would die an old man's death and sent him back to Razazel's tower. Back in action, Conan faced Razazel and his twisted blood-red doom kids, who had turned into demons. It was looking grim, but then Conan's son, and the Black Dragons of Aquilonia showed up. They helped Conan turn the battle around. Conan himself landed the final blow, cutting off Razazel's blood roots and stopping him from invading Hyboria. This epic fight went down in legend as the time a barbarian choked a dark god with his blood. As for the war with Turan, it eventually got sorted out, but the details are a bit hazy. It's safe to say that Conan's life was one wild ride from start to finish. Conan in the modern age in Marvel Comics. This was more or less history in the comics, but he also traveled to the modern age in Marvel Comics. Let's talk a little about that, shall we? Conan's adventures didn't slow down as he entered what some call the heroic or modern age. He heard about this amulet in the city of Sickles. The amulet was hidden deep in the savage land. He made his way there, taking down a bunch of ninjas from the hand before running into this brute force of a man named Logan of Pabst. They had a bit of a scrap, but eventually went their separate ways. Conan found the amulet, the third eye of Agamotto, but things got hairy when Kull and Gath woke up. Conan used a jar in the room to free a genie and tried to escape, but he heard Logan in trouble and decided to go back. Even though Gath took the third eye and nearly finished Conan, the genie he freed earlier saved him. Conan thought the genie was Crom himself, especially after it gave him a necrosword. Yeah, the same one. With this new team comprising Logan, Elektra, Dr. Voodoo, the Punisher and Venom, Conan took down the Marrow God. He grabbed the third eye from the ruins and tried to go after Gath, but the guy slipped away. Conan didn't teleport out of the savage land. He walked out with the Punisher, swapping stories along the way, then split up in Uruguay. As he journeyed north, he wasn't too impressed with the modern world but still found some action, like taking down slavers with a demon sorcerer and a spy. Then the Latvian army captured him for Dr. Doom. Conan and Doom ended up having dinner, with Doom even unmasking himself. Dr. Strange crashed their party, worried about Gath and the third eye. Conan, despite his dislike for sorcerers, teamed up with Doom and Strange to face Gath again. They survived, but Gath got away, and Conan ended up back in the Brazilian jungle. His next stop was Mexico City, where he fought alongside Venom against the Kotati Empire. He also tangled with some crooks who were feeding avatars of Shuma Gorath. After that, Elektra and Dr. Strange recruited him to take down Gath. The plan was to grab Agamotto's Eye of Power from a dragon named Sadurang, while another team dealt with Gath's followers. Conan, with magic of Krakoa, Juggernaut and the Black Knight, faced the dragon and struck a deal for the eye, collaborating with a symbiote. Conan later found himself at the bar with No Name in New York when he got into a fight with the NYPD cops and ended up on Rikers Island. But with Earth caught up in an alien invasion, he didn't stay locked up for long. With the help of fellow inmates Deadpool and Nightflyer, Conan made a break for it. Outside, they faced off against some alien dragons. That's when Conan's symbiote codex, something he got from his time with Kull and Gath's genie, woke up. Turns out it had a whole backstory. Conan and the symbiote struck a deal to team up until Gath was done for. With his new symbiote powers, Conan got the dragons to back off. The trio, now back at the bar with No Name, got roped into a heist by Nightflyer. Amidst all the chaos, they arrived at the Hellfire Club building. They had a bit of a tussle with the Marauders, Bishop, Callisto and Iceman, but eventually struck a deal to try and free Cyclops and Storm. The rescue mission didn't quite pan out, but they still got some props for their guts. When it came to the reward, Conan showed no interest in the cash. He wanted to chat with his old buddy Logan. Then, in true Conan fashion, he declared the Hellfire Club building his new castle. Fighting the champion. Conan then arrived in Las Vegas, looking to make some quick cash for his quest to take down Kull and Gath. While trying to rob an armored truck, he bumps into Nyla Skin, another thief. She talks him into helping her swipe what they think is a huge stash of emeralds from Imus Champion's suite at the Hotel Inferno. But when they got there, they found that Black Cat had already beaten them to it. Conan and Nyla give chase, tangling briefly with Scarlet Spider, before finding Black Cat and her buddy, Dr. Corpse. Black Cat was making her escape in a helicopter, but Conan stole the emeralds, which turned out to be the Serpent Ring. The ring zaps Conan and Nyla straight to Wakanda. In Wakanda, Conan tries to ditch the ring, but it ends up on his finger and leads him to a cave. Inside, there was this altar dedicated to Set, the same evil god from Conan's time. Before he can do much, Black Panther and his folks jump them and Champion teleports in to take the Serpent Scepter. After a quick word with Black Panther, Conan and Nyla head to Atlantis with a formula that lets them breathe underwater. They found another altar, but Champion had once again beaten them and took the Serpent Crown for himself. Namor, the Atlantean king, showed up, and Champion made Conan and Namor fight each other. They snap out of it, but Champion, with both the crown and scepter, knocks Conan and Nyla out and sends Namor to the Sahara. Back in Vegas, Conan breaks free and faces off with Champion, only to get dragged in front of Mephisto. Conan didn't play Mephisto's games though. He gets back to the fight and pushes Champion to use the crown and scepter so much that it fries Champion and destroys the artifacts. With their wild adventures over, Nyla takes Conan to the Bellagio for a taste of Hyboria-style living before he heads back to New York, a floating city above Manhattan. As the self-proclaimed king of the Hellfire Club, Conan's New York life mostly involved hanging out at the bar with no name, especially when he had no leads on Kull and Gath. During one of these routines, he teamed up with Rhino for a heist at the Bank of Manhattan. Things got messy when Spider-Man showed up, but Conan and Rhino managed to grab the loot and flee. Conan even got into a bit of a philosophical tussle with Spider-Man, calling him out for playing hero without pay. But since Spider-Man didn't watch Dark Knight, he didn't know that he should not do something for free if he was good at it. Later, Conan met the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. She was cool with him sticking around in the castle until he sorted out his business with Gath. But Conan, who started feeling that his fun night was spoiled, hit the streets. That's when he discovered Gath was messing with the minds of the city's sleeping folks. Before Conan could dig deeper, he ran into Ghost Rider, who mistook him for one of Gath's minions. Conan, having faced similar demons before, stood his ground. The fight got interrupted when they were suddenly pulled into Nightmare's realm. Nightmare tells them that Gath's plan was working, and Conan might be the only one who could stop him, being the one guy Gath was scared of in his nightmares. Nightmare advised him to go see Doctor Strange. Conan arrived at Strange's place just as Strange was taking down Shuma-Gorath. Then the Sickle Priest showed up, ranting about Gath's victory. They stepped outside to see the City of Sickles floating above Manhattan, taking care of the Gath menace. Kull and Gath's master plan actually worked out, but the future Conan managed to keep him busy long enough for Kang the Conqueror to come back to the present and round up the savage Avengers in the Savage Land. When future Gath chased them down, it was a real brawl. Amidst the mayhem, Magic managed to stab Gath with the same blade that took out Shuma-Gorath. Gath shrugged off the hit, thinking he'd won, but he didn't realize that Gorath's blood on the blade could revive its power and bring back the many-angled one, which looked like it finished Gath for good. The Savage Avengers threw a victory party at Castle Doom. Conan noticed Doom and Kang talking about how Gath was too risky to keep alive in any timeline. Doctor Strange wasn't cool with their plan to kill an innocent kid Gath, but before he could stop them, Conan teamed up with Kang to head back in time and stop Gath before he ever became a sorcerer. In Stygia, Conan and Kang killed Gath's master, and Conan started teaching young Gath sword fighting. After passing a test set up by Conan, Shuma-Gorath and Mekri Ra, the sorcerer supreme of Conan's time, Gath looked like he was on a better path. Kang then brought Conan back to Cimmeria, planning to kill him, since different Conans could be trouble for him. But Conan forced Kang to bring him back to the future, leaving a message on his sword: "This isn't over." Death of Conan. Again. Conan's time in the modern world got a bit too hot to handle. While squaring off against a modern cult of Set, this high-tech warrior called Deathlock showed up. The distraction caused by Deathlock meant Conan couldn't stop the cultists from setting off their mad bomb. Things went from bad to worse when a bunch of heroes immune to the mad bomb joined the mess. In the chaos, Deathlock's time machine got wrecked, and suddenly Conan, these heroes, and Deathlock were all hurled back into the Hyborian Age. Landing in different spots across Hyboria, Conan teamed up with Dagger and Anti-Venom during the Hyborian mining revolution. They fought hard against the Zingaran oppressors but ended up captured, joining forces with Cloak and Daredevil, who were also in a bind. Deathlock found them, but the arrival of Black Knight and Weapon H, plus a Hyborian devil dinosaur busting out of Cloak's cloak, gave them a chance to escape. Daredevil came up with a plan to trap Deathlock in a temple of the beast, but it went sideways when Thulsa-Doom and his cult of Set barged in. Deathlock slipped away, and Conan got captured. In Stygia, Conan was set up to be a sacrifice to bring back the elder god Set. His new Avengers buddies tried to save him, but it was too late. The ritual worked, Conan met his end, and the elder god Set rose again. Conan the Barbarian, 1982. The movie begins with a blacksmith forging a mighty sword and schooling his kid Conan about something called the Riddle of Steel, which is quite a big deal for their tribe, aka the Cimmerian people. But Conan was left bereft of his father's protective shadow and guidance when Thulsa-Doom and his raider gang attacked the tribe and wiped out all the Cimmerians. Conan's dad met his end by dogs, and Doom took his sword to decapitate Conan's mother. And to accomplish it, Thulsa-Doom used his weird hypnotic stare. Needless to say, this filled Conan with rage and anger, which he channeled to fuel his desire for vengeance. The kids end up in chains, slaving away at this massive mill called the Wheel of Pain. Working at the Wheel of Pain greatly enhanced Conan's physique, and he turned into a tough cookie from the beginning itself. In his adult life, he became all buff, which had another repercussion. You see, because of how strong he was thrown into gladiator fights, which of course he nails. All of these experiences help him learn how the world works, and he gets smart and skilled and eventually earns his freedom. Now a free man, Conan is chased by wild dogs and enters an ancient tomb, where he lays his hand on an old but powerful sword. Interestingly, in the dog scene that we see in the movie, the dogs were actually quite bloodthirsty and could have mangled Arnold. In an interview, he said,
"They bearded my pants and dragged me down off the rock, and I fell 10 feet onto my back."
He roams around, bumps into a fortune-telling witch, and befriends Subutai, a Hyrcanian thief who was great at archery. Following the witch's advice, Conan and Subutai reach Cimmeria on the hunt for Doom. They run into Valeria, a badass thief, and together they pull off a heist in the Tower of Serpents, where they manage to steal jewels and take out a huge snake. Post-heist, they begin their celebration, and I have to admit, Valeria and Conan celebrate a bit too hard, if you know what I mean. Anyway, all of that stops when the city guards capture them. They're dragged to King Osric, who's got a job for them. Rescue his daughter, Princess Yazimina, who had been brainwashed by Doom's followers, or let's just call them a cult. Valeria and Subutai were not too thrilled about this new adventure, but Conan was thirsty for revenge, so took the job and headed out solo to his destination, Doom's Temple of Set. Conan then disguises as a priest and slips into Doom's temple but gets caught, and they really work him over. Doom, being Doom, shows off his mind control skills by making a girl jump to her death. Why? Well, he wished to prove a point. Then he goes all out and crucifies Conan to the Tree of Woe. Conan was practically knocking on death's door when his friend Subutai and Akiro, the wizard who lives in a graveyard meant for kings and warriors, found him. Akiro does some magic healing by summoning spirits to heal Conan, but like any good sword and sorcery story, there's a catch. It was gonna cost them dearly, and Valeria was ready to pay up. These spooky spirits try to take Conan away, but Valeria and Subutai weren't just going to let their friend be a thing of yesterday, so they fight the spirits off. Once Conan was back on his feet, he teamed up with Subutai and Valeria to rescue the princess from Doom's Temple of Set. They crash this freaky cannibalistic orgy, grab the princess, and make a quick getaway. But Doom, who's turned into a giant snake, did all he can to ensure that the men and women didn't escape. Doom gets a lucky shot in and hits Valeria with a snake arrow, and she dies in Conan's arms. The price for saving him. It's evident that now it was personal for Conan. He didn't just lose a girlfriend, he lost one who sacrificed herself for him. Naturally, the big guy was all fired up for revenge. He gets ready with Subutai and Akiro to take the fight to Thulsa Doom. They ask Crom, their god, for some backup. Using traps in the lay of the land, they take down Doom's warriors. Once again, it started to seem like Conan was gonna meet his maker, but Valeria showed up like a Valkyrie to save the day and Conan. Doom tries to take out the princess with a snake arrow, but Subutai blocks it. Doom books it and leaves Conan to finish off his right-hand man, Rexor, and get back his dad's sword. However, Conan wasn't done yet. He sneaks back into the temple where Doom was giving something on the lines of a pep talk to his followers. Conan faces him, but he tries to mesmerize the barbarian. But this time around, Conan shrugs off Doom's mind tricks and chops his head off with his dad's broken sword. And with that, Doom's cult was over. The cultists leave, and Conan torches the place. Mission accomplished. He takes the princess back to her dad, Osric. Conan the Destroyer, 1984. In the second movie, Conan and his buddy Malak get ambushed by Queen Taramis of Shadizar, who wants to see if they're tough enough for a job. So, how does the queen figure out if the big muscular guy and his friend were potent enough? Well, she throws a bunch of guards at them and they hold their own. The queen tells about a quest to Conan, but doesn't want to do anything for a woman who just unleashed her guards at him. And why should he? He owes her nothing. However, Queen Taramis plays her trump card and tells Conan that she can bring back his lost love, Valeria. That gets Conan's attention, and he happily agrees to do the queen's bidding. But what really is the deal? What does Conan have to do? We learn that he's to escort the queen's niece, Princess Jenna, to retrieve this fancy gem called the Heart of Ahriman. This rock is the key to finding the jeweled horn of the god, Dagoth. Conan and Malak are also accompanied by Bombata, the captain of the queen's armed guards. Little do they know, Bombata had plans from Taramis to kill Conan once they had what they needed. First up, they need to break into a wizard's fortress to get the gem. But before that, Conan needs his wizard pal Akiro, who's currently on the menu for some cannibals. They busted Akiro out, and they bumped into Zula, another tough warrior who was getting a rough time from the villagers. Jenna wants to save Zula, and Conan agrees to do so. Now he'd saved warriors. While not all were entirely noble, they found themselves indebted and offered their help, and from his past experiences, he learned that in the kind of quests he took up, the more the merrier was the way to go. Conan and his group head to Thoth-Amon's castle to grab that gem, but of course, their path wouldn't be an easy one. That night, they crashed by a lake, and while they were off for the night, the wizard in whose fortress the gem was kept turned into a giant bird and flew away with Jenna. Akiro, the wizard in Conan's gang, figures this out and also finds a water gate to get into the fortress. Once inside, things get dicey. Conan gets cut off from the group and ends up in a fight with a crazy man-beast in a hall full of mirrors. Regular attacks by Conan fail to do the trick. His hits pass right through. But Conan clocks that smashing the mirrors hurts the beast. So he goes on a mirror-breaking spree, finally taking the creature down. Interestingly, they figure out that the beast is actually Thoth-Amon in disguise, a polymorphed version to be precise. With Thoth-Amon gone, the castle starts falling apart and barely manage to escape without getting hurt. I like how this supernatural self-destruction thing works. On their way out, they get jumped by Taramis's guards. They fend them off, but Bombata plays dumb about the whole thing. With the gem in hand, they find out where this jeweled horn is. Meanwhile, Jenna tells Conan about how she likes him, but he rejects her, telling her that his heart was still with Valeria. Later, Conan and the gang arrive at this old temple to take the horn. Jenna grabbed it while Akira was busy translating some carvings. Interestingly, the carvings say Jenna had to be sacrificed to wake up Dagoth. Just then, temple priests ambush them. They find a secret exit, but Bombata reveals his true nature as a traitor and nabs Jenna, blocking the way out. Still, Conan and company manage to slip away from the priests and head to Shadizar to save Jenna. Malak led them to a back door that led to the throne room. Conan goes toe-to-toe with Bombata and takes him down. Meanwhile, Sula skewered the Grand Vizier just as he was about to sacrifice Jenna, but setting the horn in Dagoth's brow turns him into a monster. He kills Taramis and goes after Conan. Zula and Malak try to help but get brushed off. Akira tells Conan that the horn is what's keeping Dagoth alive. Conan destroys it and finishes the job. Later, Queen Jenna was handing out jobs in her new court. Zula as head of the guard, Akira as advisor, and Malak as court jester. She even offers Conan the king's spot by her side. But Conan has other plans. I think I should be happy with a tenth of this man's audacity. I mean, this guy just turned down the office of the king and hot queen. Anyway, he turns her down, ready to chase his own destiny. Conan the Barbarian, 2011. In this movie, Conan's origin is largely the same as the original film, but with a few subtle differences. Conan's story starts with him being born right in the middle of a battlefield, a true barbarian's entrance. His father, Corin, was the chief of their tribe, and Conan quickly showed that he was a tough kid, sure, but more importantly, he was also kind of intense, even for a warrior. Then their village gets wrecked by this warlord, Kalar Zim. Zim was on a mission to put together an ancient powerful mask, the Mask of Acheron. It's supposed to bring his dead sorceress wife back to life and let him rule Hyboria. The mask was split up and scattered to keep it from being used by just about anyone. However, Zim learned about its powers and decided to get his hands on it. He began collecting the pieces by any means necessary, and these escapades usually ended in a lot of blood being spilled. In a bid to get another piece of the mask, Zim wiped out Conan's village. He took their piece of the mask and left Conan as the sole survivor of his people. A few years later, Conan grew up to become a formidable man and was living the life of a pirate, but his heart was still burning for revenge against Zim for his father's death and the massacre of his village. In Mysantia, he runs into this thief, Elashan, being chased by Zim's henchman, Lucius. Conan recognizes Lucius from the attack on his village. He lets himself get caught to get close to Lucius, then gives him a rough time until he reveals that Zim is after a woman from the Acheron sorcerer's bloodline to unlock the mask's full mojo. After getting what he needs, Conan sets Lucius' captives free, and they take care of Lucius for him. Zim and his daughter Marique, who's also a sorceress, arrive at a monastery looking for this pure-blood descendant they need. They're after Tamara, but her mentor, Fasir, tells her to make a run for it. Conan swoops in and saves Tamara before taking care of Zim's right-hand guy, Remo. After figuring out who Tamara is, Conan gets creative and launches Remo via catapult right into Zim's camp. Now, this guy was giving the words "kill a message" a whole new meaning. When Zim and Marique face off with Conan, Zim finally puts the pieces together and realizes Conan's the kid he left behind years ago. Unfortunately, Marique attacks Conan with a poison-tipped boomerang sword, but Tamara manages a daring rescue. They dive into the sea and make it back to Conan's ship, where he gets some downtime to recover. But there's no rest for the wicked. Zim's men attack the ship. Conan and his crew fight fiercely and manage to send the bad guys back to where they came from. Conan then sets off to take the fight to Zim's turf. His buddy Artus nudges Tamara to follow Conan, which quite expectedly leads to a romantic interlude. But as Tamara heads back to the boat the next day, she gets captured by Zim's goons. Conan needed a hand to bust into Zim's castle, so he roped in Elashan. Inside, Zim was busy with a ritual using Tamara's blood to fix the mask, and he was planning to shove his wife's soul into Tamara's body. Meanwhile, Conan had to contend with this freaky tentacled monster guarding the dungeons, but he gets past it and rescues Tamara before getting into a fierce one-on-one battle with Zim. He also takes back the sword Marique had taken from Conan's father. During the fight, Marique tries to stop him but ends up getting a hand chopped off and doesn't make it. However, Conan and Tamara find themselves stuck on a bridge, and Zim is using the mask to bring back his wife's spirit into Tamara. Conan's quick thinking led to him smashing the bridge, which effectively sent Zim into a lava bath, and our barbarian and Tamara managed to make a narrow escape. After all the chaos, Conan drops Tamara off at her home. Then he heads to his old village, takes a moment to remember his dad, dad and finds himself at peace for having avenged his father, getting back the sword and settling his family's honor. Conan the Adventurer, 1992 TV series. In the heavily mellowed-down animated series, Conan grew up in Cimmeria. On one eventful night with his granddad, the two of them see meteors, aka fiery tears, fall from the sky. Young Conan then gathers them up and brings them home. His father, the village blacksmith, who was a wizard with metal, uses this space rock to forge star metal. Using this new metal, he makes these incredible tools and weapons that are basically indestructible. He sells most, but crafts a great sword for Conan. But being a responsible father, he didn't just give away the sword to Conan. He set up a test for young Conan and kept the sword under a heavy stone slab in a crypt. And Conan can claim it only when he's strong enough to move the slab. The news of star metal soon reaches Thoth-Amon, who was a serpent man wizard. Thoth-Amon had big plans for star metal because it can open portals to other dimensions. He wants it to free his god Set from some deep abyss where he's been locked away by a bunch of wizards back in the day for trying to enslave humans. Thoth-Amon hears about Conan's dad and the star metal, so he arrives in Cimmeria to demand the sword from Conan's father. The man says that he sold all of it, but Thoth-Amon didn't believe him. It turns out Conan's father was smart and hid bits of star metal around the village. Thoth-Amon didn't get what he wanted and attacked Conan's family with this spell that turned them into living stones. So Conan, amped up to use his new star metal sword, confronts Thoth-Amon and his henchmen. The cool thing about this sword was that it messed with Thoth-Amon's magic and showed his true lizard-like face. Now, this hidden power served Conan beyond measure in a fight against the skilled and ruthless wizard that Thoth-Amon was. Thoth-Amon freaks out and says, "Those who see the true face of Thoth-Amon must perish." Anyway, Conan manages to scare off the wizard but then finds his family turned into stone. He vows to Crom, their god, that he'll find a way to break the spell. This starts Conan's epic journey across Hyboria, hunting for a cure for his family and trying to put an end to Thoth-Amon's reign. It's later revealed that Thoth-Amon's minions were also shape-shifting serpent men, and Conan's star metal sword has the same effect on the serpent men as if it did on Thoth-Amon. It reveals their true snaky forms when he's close and can even send them to the abyss, with Set if it touches them. Additionally, apart from Thoth-Amon's henchmen, spies and agents lurking all over the place in cities and nations during Conan's time were also serpent men. The Conan in the cartoon is very different from the original Conan stories and Marvel comics like King Conan and Conan the Barbarian. The original Conan was a jack of many trades. He was a thief, killer, ladies' man, and more. But the cartoon Conan was more like your friendly neighborhood hero with a sword, very much on the lines of He-Man. He had a solid moral compass, like he won't join pirates because stealing is uncool and a crime, and he also won't harm unarmed or already opponents. The animated Conan is essentially a good guy, kind, a bit green behind the ears, always ready to back his friends and do the right thing. When it comes to the serpent men, instead of getting killed, they just get banished with a touch of the hero's weapons, kinda like the special farms where our pets go to stay where no human is allowed to visit. Conan and the Young Warriors. In this show, which can rightly be called Conan the Babysitter and the Young Warriors, the man loses everything that makes him Conan. Well, almost everything. He starts to feel that he's done with all the adventuring after he beats Thoth-Amon, and even his family has come back to normal, not stone anymore. But no, like always, there's more on his plate. Now he's got to mentor these three young guns, the Chosen Ones, who are in possession of the magical Starstones. He's got to train them up until they're ready to take the reins in Hyboria. Even though this series feels a bit different, it still ties back to the old Conan the Adventurer theme. Conan himself looks the same as in the Adventurer series. Every now and then you'll catch a bit of the old Conan the Adventurer theme music in the background. Conan sometimes talks about his adventures from the past, like mentioning this wizard Grey Wolf of Xanthus told him about. Or this time he met a firebird. He even cracks a joke about having eaten the firebird.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.